Hello, welcome to my channel again. Today, this week, we'll have technical interview as a topic. So if you just start interviewing and doing technical interview, or you start lead coding, and this is a video for you, and hopefully these 7 tips can help you do a little bit better during the process. So let's jump right in. Hopefully you can see the screen right now. And today we have 7 tips for a technical mock interview or technical interview. So having a technical interview could be challenging and unpredictable. So the goal of this interview is to value the candidate's problem-solving skills and see if they can translate the thought process into a reasonably correct or well-structured code. So yeah, I don't think a mock interview is something that you have to pass, but if you can demonstrate a really good communication skill, problem solving skill, and have a really good looking code and clean code, and sometimes it's more important than solving the problem. So the first tip for this week is understand first. So when you get to see the problem, and the first thing you can do is understand the problem. So it's easy to read the question, yeah, and start coding it. But it's important to know the problem at first, trying to solve and consider the edge cases and limitation of that questions. What that means is sometimes we always assume that's the question that we are thinking, but it's the person in front of you can ask to try to make sure you clear that question and have any edge cases you need to consider. If you just jump right into the coding, there's something wrong. You will come out later. My suggestion is when you think about this question, which is same as when you communicate to another person. If a person tell you, "Oh, I'm from New York," and you can always repeat the same thing. Say, "Oh, you're from New York." So what's that mean is you rephrase other people's question or rephrase other people's sentence that will automatically make people like you. And if they say yes, that means they already agree with you in the beginning. So it's a really good impression that you should have. So now, second thing is, even if they say no, it's good because you're eliminating and saving your time. If you just keep going through that thought process and you're solving the problem in the wrong way, right? Because you understand it wrong, that might cost more. I mean, cost your time and create a bad impression. So this is the first tips. So you should do, and this is something that I remind myself all the time. The second one is analyze. So demonstrate your analysis from showing the interviewer time complexity and space complexity. So this is a way to navigate to more efficient solution. What that mean is, since you have an idea or solution in your mind, you can tell them by make sure that you're doing it right and the answer is acceptable. Most of the time, they would like to hear your thought process before the interview. So not only they have a idea what they're gonna listen or see, another thing is they will make sure you're doing it in the right time complexity. So your idea is doing a problem in a n square as a time complexity, but the solution is required to be log n or n log n, something like that. So then your question is not acceptable. So by telling the interviewer the time complexity or your analysis, it's good to have a good communication at the beginning to make sure the answer is right. And this is second tips. Let's go to the third tips, which is get stuck. We always get stuck if when the question is too hard or higher than our ability to solve it. To try to have an example to run through the thought process and talk through the edge cases, mark them down, as it's important to start with something instead of being silent for minutes. Yeah, it's true. If you have no clue how to start it, and it's hard to get to the optimized time complexity solution. So at that time, it's just good to run through a simple example and run through the thought process and consider the edge cases. For example, write down something or use some comment to write down the edge cases. Then at least you have something to talk instead of thinking of nothing. So I can demonstrate uh, um, like this is something like being silent. It's just awkward. Even though you can just reread the question or do something during that time, is better. So if you're getting nervous, they can feel it too. So you make them feeling nervous too in the same time. So don't get stuck. And this is a third tips. And the fourth tips is draw a diagram. So when you have a basic idea and it's hard to demonstrate it, right? Some questions can be hard to explain. Drawing a diagram visualize the questions are not only for the candidate, but also the interviewer. What that mean is, if you have an example is and hard to explain, you can always draw out the data structure, for example, a stack or map, and put some data and simply run through one time in maybe 1 minute. Then they have an idea, and later you don't need to explain in detail for that part. So that's the fourth tip. And number 5 will be still stuck. So it's time to get some help. Feel free to communicate with the interviewer for the thought process, and usually they will provide some hints from the interviewer's point of view. They want the candidate to finish it instead of struggling for 10, 20 minutes. Yeah, it's true. Most of the interviewer would like to help because helping getting you through this process is better than let's just failing everybody, unless you met with somebody is like really, really hard to deal with. Sometimes it happens too. So, but most of them asking reasonable questions is one of the time that you can showcase your communication skill. Yeah, asking a reasonable question, then you get to know the questions fast. And sometimes they if the question is really straightforward, you just need a little bit push, and then you get the answer right away. Sometimes it happens. Yeah, this is still stuck. So the next tips is time's up. Oftentimes, if you encounter a question that you think is really hard for you, then you just need that question to be done and finish and pass that interview. But time's up. So if there's not enough time to finish the code, it doesn't mean that the interview is a failure. So if the candidate can tell the remaining portion of the code to the interviewer and the solution sounds good, that could be good impression overall. What that means is the interviewer looking at you is really clear, and they might have like 1 or 2 minutes in, and they already know how good you are by looking at your code and the thought process. It's amazing that if you interview somebody else one time, then you can have the feeling that I already know the candidate can pass in the first 3 minutes, because most of the time when you start coding, some syntax or some coding style can see how long you've been coding or how many projects you have done. If you have a good coding style, you have a good thinking process, you just haven't finished the code and you tell them the thought process, even though you haven't finished the code. It happened to me one of the time that I haven't finished the code, and I tell them the optimized solution, and that's the remaining portions of this code. They also passed it, and then I got the offer. So it doesn't mean that it's failing. Just if you make sure that your code is clean, solution is optimized in the right time complexity, and some edge cases is all considered, then it should be fine. And they also have a good communication. So this is the next tips right here, communication. So a good communication skill is required for all the tips above. So talking clearly, concisely for every explanation, keep conversation flowing back and forth, and actively singing the thought process with the interviewer throughout the interview are keys of passing. That is so true, even though if we just want to have a communication online with a stranger, it's always good to listen to what they're talking and then respond back and ask good question and then listen again, just back and forth. Because most of the time interviewer they just listening, and it's good that you tell a story and communicate your thought process well during this process. And this is really important. I would say this is the most important one. Uh, if you pass the technical interview without communication skills, I think it's rare. I mean, unless you're too good. But this week, I have a bonus. Out of these 7 tips, is confident. So when you're solving a problem, even though you didn't do well in that one, but during the process, you shouldn't have a mindset that please don't lower yourself for this position. For example, oh no, I think I'm not sure. Something like that. Those kind of thing is just basically showing you that you're not confident enough. So you should walk in and then try your best, even though it's failing. Have a mindset of failing is okay. Make yourself confident, and then that is good enough for this whole technical interview. To point of to my opinion. So I hope this 7 tips is good and help you do a little bit better during the interview process. And if you have any question, please comment below, and I would love to hear your feedback. So that's it for today's sharing. So I will see you next week. Bye.